In the final, desperate years of World War II, Japanese commanders whispered about one American warship as if it were a creature born from the deep. A battleship so fast it could outrun cruisers, so heavily armed it could shatter steel fortresses, and so untouchable that Japanese pilots often refused to attack it at all. Its name was USS Iowa, but to those who faced it, it was simply the sea monster. Imagine standing on the deck of a Japanese destroyer and suddenly hearing the distant thunder of 16-inch guns, each shell heavier than a small car, tearing through the sky at nearly the speed of sound. Moments later, entire formations disappeared in walls of fire. Radar-guided, armor-plated, and impossibly powerful, Iowa didn't just fight battles. It ended them. This is the terrifying story of the American battleship Japan hoped they would never face. To understand why the USS Iowa became one of the most feared warships of World War II, you have to step back into a world where the Pacific Ocean had turned into a battleground of giants. Nations were racing to build bigger, faster, deadlier machines, vessels capable of deciding the fate of entire fleets with a single broadside. And in the middle of this global storm, America unveiled something extraordinary. USS Iowa was not just another battleship. It was the embodiment of American industrial power, naval engineering, and a determination to end the war at sea. Longer than 2 football fields, armed with the most devastating naval guns ever put on a U.S. ship, and fast enough to escort aircraft carriers, the Iowa class shattered what the world believed battleships could be. For Japan, Iowa represented a nightmare, a ship they struggled to track, struggled to damage, and, most dangerously, struggled to understand. Every time Iowa entered a theater, enemy intelligence reports grew more frantic. Commanders prepared. Crews braced. Pilots feared the skies above it. Because Iowa didn't just sail into battle. It changed the balance of the Pacific. In this documentary, we uncover how this floating titan earned its legendary reputation. Long before the USS Iowa ever fired its first shot, the world's oceans were already trembling with tension. The 1930s had transformed the Pacific into a naval chessboard where every move carried the weight of nations. Japan was expanding rapidly, building a formidable empire, and behind closed steel doors its engineers were crafting something terrifying, super battleships of the Yamato class, vessels so massive and so heavily armed that no American ship of the era could stand against them alone. The United States watched this build-up with growing concern. Battleships were still seen as the ultimate symbol of power, the guardians of sea control. But now, America needed something new, something faster than any battleship ever built, strong enough to withstand the heaviest shells, and powerful enough to destroy anything afloat. In shipyards from New York to California, designers began sketching what would become the most advanced battleships of the entire war, the Iowa class. From the very beginning, Iowa was envisioned as a different breed. It wasn't just meant to be strong, it was meant to be relentless. The U.S. Navy needed a ship that could escort fast aircraft carriers, pursue Japanese surface raiders, and respond instantly to threats across thousands of miles of open ocean. That required a battleship capable of speeds previously thought impossible, approaching 33 knots, a figure that shocked engineers around the world. As steel plates were welded together and engines lowered into place, the scale of the project became clear. Iowa would be longer, faster, and more lethal than anything the U.S. had ever commissioned. When the massive hull slid into the water for the first time, observers described it as watching a skyscraper come alive, a towering structure of armor and firepower that dwarfed everything around it. Japanese intelligence soon picked up rumors of this new American titan. Their reports used words like unprecedented, high-speed battleship, and most chilling of all, carrier killer. For Japan, whose naval strategy depended heavily on fast, coordinated strikes, the thought of a battleship that could keep up with carriers was deeply unsettling. By the time USS Iowa completed its sea trials, it had already earned a reputation without firing a single shell. The Navy called it a masterpiece. Engineers called it a breakthrough in naval design. But among those who studied its capabilities from across the Pacific, a different term began to spread. A sea monster was rising, one built not just to challenge Japan's fleet, but to dominate the entire Pacific War. To understand why the USS Iowa struck fear into the hearts of Japan's naval commanders, you must step inside the steel fortress itself, deep into the machinery, firepower, and engineering genius that transformed this battleship into a floating monster. Iowa wasn't merely a warship, it was a mobile city of metal, precision, and unstoppable strength. The first thing anyone noticed about Iowa was its guns. Towering above the deck were 9 16-inch/50 caliber Mark 7 rifles, arranged in 3 massive turrets. Each of these barrels could hurl a 2,700-pound armor-piercing shell, nearly the weight of a small car, across distances of more than 20 miles. When one of these guns fired, the shockwave rattled bulkheads, shook windows miles away, and lifted the entire ship sideways in the water. A full broadside from Iowa wasn't just an attack, it was a seismic event. Yet what made these guns truly terrifying wasn't just their size. It was their accuracy. Iowa carried the most advanced fire control radar of any battleship in the world. While Japanese ships relied on visual rangefinding, often hindered by weather, darkness, or smoke, Iowa could track targets through storms, fog, or the pitch-black night with mathematical precision. This meant Iowa could hit an enemy long before the enemy even knew it was being hunted. Then there was the armor. Iowa wasn't slow like older American battleships, it didn't lumber through waves. Instead, it moved with a strange, predatory grace. Beneath its hull, four massive General Electric boilers fed 8 steam turbines, producing more than 212,000 horsepower. This staggering power allowed the 45,000-ton ship to slice through the ocean at speeds that shocked even U.S. naval designers. In an era where most battleships struggled to reach 27 knots, Iowa pushed past 33, making it the fastest battleship ever built by the United States. This speed wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary. For the first time, America had a battleship that could escort aircraft carriers in offensive operations, not just defensive formations. It could chase down Japanese cruisers, outrun enemy battleships, and reposition itself across entire war zones in record time. Iowa wasn't chained to slower formations, it was free, maneuverable, and always ready to strike. But inside the armored hull, the true power lay in the crew. More than 2,700 sailors lived and worked aboard the ship, each trained to operate their section with near-religious discipline. In the boiler rooms, men endured temperatures over 120 degrees. In the gun turrets, loaders handled shells taller than a man with only seconds to spare between salvos. Officers in the Combat Information Center monitored radar screens glowing like eyes in the dark, guiding Iowa toward targets with scientific precision. Life aboard Iowa was exhausting, dangerous, and relentless. But it built something Japan never expected, a synchronization between man and machine so tight that the ship behaved less like steel and more like a living, breathing predator. To the Japanese Navy, Iowa wasn't a battleship. It was a weapon system, a perfect fusion of firepower, speed, and intelligence. It was a ship that could kill from over the horizon, survive blows that shattered lesser vessels, and move with the speed of a cruiser. A warship like this didn't just join the fight. It changed the rules of naval warfare. USS Iowa's true test came not during its trials, but when it entered the blazing heart of the Pacific War, a battlefield where the sky burned with tracer fire and the sea churned with the wreckage of shattered fleets. The moment Iowa reached the front lines, the U.S. Navy wasted no time unleashing its newest titan. Its first major assignment was monumental, escorting President Franklin D. Roosevelt aboard during the journey to the Tehran Conference. For any other ship, this would be a ceremonial task. For Iowa, it was an announcement, a signal to the world that America trusted this battleship with the life of the president himself. The ship sailed through waters infested with German U-boats, but nothing dared approach. With powerful radar, heavy escorts, and unmatched speed, Iowa carved through the Atlantic like a beast on patrol. But its true baptism came in the Pacific, where Japan's powerful navy waited. When Iowa arrived at the Marshall Islands campaign in early 1944, American commanders finally saw what the ship was capable of. As U.S. carrier groups launched waves of aircraft toward enemy positions, Iowa took its place as the fleet's shield, detecting threats, targeting enemy ships, and blasting coastal positions with earth-shattering fire. Japanese defenders learned quickly that when Iowa's guns opened fire, you didn't stand and fight. You ran. The ship's 16-inch shells punched through bunkers, fuel tanks, artillery positions, and any resistance unlucky enough to be in range. Entire shorelines vanished behind walls of water and flame. Observers described the bombardment as a rolling earthquake, with each salvo sending a pressure wave across the sea and through the bones of the men who witnessed it. But Iowa's most dramatic moment came during the showdown with Japanese aircraft during the Marianas and Leyte operations. When enemy planes swarmed toward the U.S. fleet, Iowa's dense anti-aircraft batteries roared to life. Dozens of 40mm Bofors and 20mm Oerlikon cannons filled the sky with a spinning grid of metal, creating a curtain of fire that few pilots could penetrate. The ship's radar-guided systems tracked enemy bombers long before they were visible. When the threat grew too severe, Iowa didn't retreat, it accelerated. Its unmatched speed allowed it to reposition instantly, cutting off attack routes and protecting the carriers at the fleet center. Again and again, Japanese pilots reported the same thing. There was one ship we could not get near. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, better known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, Iowa stood like a fortress amidst the chaos. Waves of Japanese aircraft fell from the sky, shredded by American fighters and flak batteries. And through the smoke and fire, Iowa kept moving, undamaged, unbreakable. Its baptism of fire was complete. USS Iowa had proven not only that it could survive in the Pacific, but that it could dominate it. For months, rumors about the USS Iowa had circulated through the Imperial Japanese Navy, whispers carried from scouting pilots, decoded American transmissions, and shaken survivors of bombardments. But rumors were one thing. The moment Japan realized the true power of Iowa became something altogether different, a turning point that forced their admirals to face a terrifying reality. It began with intelligence reports during the 1944 campaigns in the Philippines. Japanese reconnaissance aircraft spotted an American task force moving with unusual speed, advancing faster than any known battleship group could possibly travel. At first, analysts assumed it must be a cruiser squadron. But the radar signatures were too large, too heavy, too powerful. When clearer sightings came in, disbelief spread across Japanese command rooms. The ship racing across the ocean, outrunning cruisers and even some destroyers, wasn't a cruiser at all. It was a battleship. And not just any battleship, Iowa. This was the moment the concern turned into fear. Japanese naval doctrine had long relied on the idea that their super battleships, Yamato and Musashi, were the kings of the Pacific. They were slow, armored giants built to withstand immense punishment. But Japan had always believed that America's battleships were far too slow to threaten their mobile task forces. That assumption evaporated when Iowa appeared like a silver phantom, diving into combat zones at speeds that defied logic. But speed wasn't what truly terrified Japan. It was Iowa's ability to strike without ever being seen. During the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Japanese ships reported incoming shells landing with frightening accuracy long before they spotted any American vessel. Some believed U.S. submarines were firing coordinated attacks. Others assumed aircraft were directing bombardments. But one terrified officer wrote in his report, "The enemy guns are hitting us from beyond the horizon. We cannot see the ship. We can only see the destruction." It was Iowa. Its advanced radar allowed it to fire through darkness, smoke, rain, and even evasive maneuvers that normally disrupted traditional gunnery. Japanese captains described the impact of radar-guided shells as ghost attacks, as if the ocean itself was striking them. The psychological effect was devastating. Pilots became reluctant to attack Iowa. Anti-aircraft fire from the ship was so intense and so precisely coordinated that reaching bombing position felt like suicide. Several pilots later admitted in post-war interviews that they deliberately avoided Iowa when assigned targets. And then came the most chilling confirmation of all. Intercepted Japanese communications referring to Iowa as the fast monster and the battleship that cannot be killed. This was the truth Japan now had to face. A ship that could outrun their cruisers, outgun their battleships, detect their planes before they were airborne, and strike with inhuman accuracy. In that moment, the Imperial Japanese Navy understood something they had never wanted to admit. They were no longer hunting the enemy. They were being hunted. As World War II drew to its thunderous close, the USS Iowa had already carved its name into the steel history of naval warfare. It had escorted the president, shielded carrier fleets, smashed fortified islands, and haunted the calculations of Japanese admirals. But Iowa's legacy didn't end with the last shot fired in the Pacific. In many ways, it was only beginning. After Japan's surrender, the world shifted into an uneasy peace, one defined not by battleships, but by emerging Cold War tensions. For most ships, this transition meant retirement. But Iowa was not like most ships. It remained a symbol of American strength, a floating reminder of what industrial power and naval engineering could achieve. In the years that followed, Iowa served with distinction through multiple eras. It stood guard during the Korean War, its colossal guns once again raining destruction on enemy positions. It was modernized, upgraded, and converted into a 20th-century war machine capable of launching guided missiles, an incredible evolution for a ship designed in the age of steel duels. And yet, despite its upgrades, Iowa never lost the aura it carried from the Pacific. Sailors who served aboard spoke of it with a mixture of pride and reverence. Even decades after the war, foreign navies still studied Iowa's design, marveling at how a battleship built in the early 1940s could remain relevant in the age of jets and nuclear submarines. But perhaps the most remarkable part of Iowa's legacy is the impact it had on naval warfare itself. The ship proved that a battleship didn't need to be slow, predictable, or limited by old doctrines. Iowa had broken the rules, combining speed, firepower, and advanced technology in ways that reshaped naval strategy. It set a standard so high that even future warships struggled to match its balance of strength and mobility. Today, USS Iowa rests as a museum, a silent titan standing watch over the waters it once ruled. Tourists walk its decks, unaware that beneath their feet lies the heartbeat of a ship that once changed the fate of battles, terrified enemy pilots, and earned a legacy as one of the greatest warships ever built. For those who know its story, Iowa is more than steel and armor. It is a legend. The sea monster of the Pacific. In the vast, unforgiving waters of the Pacific, countless warships came and went, their names fading into the tides of history. But USS Iowa was different. It stood as a symbol of unmatched engineering, unstoppable firepower, and the bravery of the men who sailed it. Long after the guns fell silent, its legacy continued, echoing through naval strategy, military innovation, and the memories of those who witnessed its might. Today, Iowa rests in peace, but its story remains alive. A reminder that even in the darkest of wars, giants still walked the sea.